trim a couple of bowls that are leather hard. These are made a couple of days ago, and this has some white slip that's kind of woven. I think the Japanese call this akane. And then these were already thrown and dried and trimmed yesterday. So this is the kind of flip that we're going to try to attempt. And in Japan, when they have a show of tea bowls, 1 week the pieces will be shown this way, and then the next week they turn them over to say that the foot is just as important as the rest of the pie. All right? So the best thing to do is get it centered. So that's what we're going to try to do. So we kind of manually do it first, and then we're going to just try to tap it. Let's see if we can get it in the center of the wheel, more or less. So that's pretty much. And then we use, I'm using a porcelain for these mugs or whatever you call them to stick this down, because I've got some white slip on here. I'd like to not mess it up with a different color. And I've found over the years that if you push down on these things, instead of pushing in, just push down and let it spread out, and you don't have a chance of messing up your bowl or unrounding your bowl, if that's a word. So we spread it out just by pushing down and back in. And I usually start with this fat tool. And what I'm trying to do now is define the profile and not do anything to the inside yet, as you can see. Try to trim down to where the porcelain slip, the white slip, is about right there. And I kind of know, how thick it is and about how much I want to trim, just because I felt it before I put it down here, and also just generally kind of know, what my pots are, how thick they are. I really like this little separation right here, and that happens by just holding this tool and pushing it a little bit hard right there. And since leather hard clay is almost like trimming wood compared to wet clay, you have to be pretty firm. I like to see people hold, with both hands. Now I'm going to just do a little bevel right here. So that's pretty much the profile that I want. When I go to a smaller tool, I usually use the round side of this tool. It just seems like the right tool. It's sharp. And you got to hold everything really still. And also I like to think in terms of when you start with this tool, you want to think of it like cutting a piece of wood where you don't just dig into it. You kind of start slow and then you can go a little deeper. Just start slow. Just go across. And I try to encourage people to throw with a fairly thick bottom so that you actually have some play to do some fairly deep trimming. Like if you notice on this, there's enough there that you can really hold on to when you glaze it. So that's kind of a nice little feature. And if you end up with just a teeny little bit of clay here, you can't hold it. I'll take a little bit more of this out. So now I'm using the square end of this. try to get right in this corner. And this can be left really smooth in here, or you can do a little pigtail, which I kind of like. And then I bevel the outside and the inside. And usually because you cut it off the wheel, it's usually pretty level here. And then I usually take a sponge and just try to knit all this together. Just a little finger like that, so it's nice and dull. You don't want it to be anything that's sharp at this stage would be like a razor blade. It'll be fire. And then I'll come back and burnish this down. If you don't, the glazes sometimes look a lot different over a trim place than over a burnished place, or just your throwing greens. So it's pretty clean, so I'll keep this one. And now would be a good time if you do chop or sign. It's a little wet. I like to do kind of almost a cheddar cheese-ish, kind of hard for sign. Otherwise it just kind of folds into itself and makes a big mess. So that's kind of what I'm up to here. And then I dry these upside down. Put them on the foot now, they're still kind of damp and they'll pick up all kinds of trash from wherever you put them in. And I'll try that one. This again has some white snip with some finger lines through it. Now, there are all kinds of ways to trim, pots, bowls, whatever. This is just a way that I've developed because I've seen one person do this, another person do that over, decades. And you just kind of mix it all together and you end up with your own way of doing it. That's what we all learn. It's just by watching people work, picking up little bits and pieces. There you go again. Hold it really tight. And I hold on this side in this case, in case it moves. Sometimes these things will get pulled up and it'll go flying off. So it just saves you a lot of embarrassment just to hold it right here. Just in case it goes flying. And then you have to think about, the scale, the size of the foot relative to the size of the bowl. I tend to like feet that are kind of small. I mean, if you wanted a really practical foot, if we're not tipping over when you scoop out of it, then it should be much bigger. But I just like them more smaller and just more delicate. So I don't worry too much about the functional part of it.
Not to be vain, not in the picture. Just a simple yes or no.
No. But you'll be on the soundtrack. Now this particular little pigtail right here, I really love. I don't know if you can see that kind of from the top. That's my favorite thing when that happens. And I'll show you, there's one little trick there that's kind of neat. If you happen to, if the foot is cut uneven, so this part is not even, I'll show you a little trick you can do to fix that. If you bevel that kind of severely like that, and bevel this, then all you have to do, because you have such a little bit of surface there. Just use your needle tool and you can get it back to square like that. I don't usually charge any extra for those kind of tips. All right, so now let's see, I forgot what I was doing. See that? It jumped up. It needs to be pushed down a little again, just in case. It's even better than it was. I'm trying to thicken this up. I kind of took some of the foot out, just showing that little trick there. So not exactly what I want, but it's close enough. And if you feel like it's a little bit too thick, again, I'll burnish this down so it's not so gritty. What happens here when you trim, you take off the small particles and leave the bigger particles, like fire clay and grog and stuff like that. It's big particles. Usually stays and the small, skinny stuff gets trimmed away and you end up with a rough edge. Okay? Or a rough surface, I should say. All right. That's what it looks like. Yeah. I think this is hard enough that it doesn't smear. All right, good, goody.